Hi, it's John at JWH Millinery and welcome back to my channel. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Have a look down below. There should be a little red subscribe button. If it's not red, that means you're subscribed. So if you are subscribed, make sure you hit that bell and you'll be notified when we release videos in the future. Make sure you check me out on Patreon. All the Patreon details will be linked in the description box below and a link somewhere here to my Patreon video. So finally we get round to another video in this series, Drag Me to the Hatshop, where we make hats and fascinators inspired by some of my most favourite drag queens from RuPaul's Drag Race. Now the queen that we are representing in this piece, this episode, is somebody that really didn't have the best chance in my eyes on her season. I think she came back, but since then she's just really gone from strength to strength to strength. She's a very, very big favourite of all the fans and it's absolutely hysterical, very cutting, like some of the stuff she says is a little bit like borderline, but it's hysterical. So I'll give you some clues to who we are featuring this week. Number one, she was an extra in American Horror Story. Number two, she seems to be in nightgowns and nightwear quite a lot. And number three, she has an obsession with Barbie. Still don't know who I'm talking about. If you're not a fan, then you probably don't know, but if you are a fan, you should have got it by now. And of course, this episode, we are honouring the most beautiful drag queen called TRIXIE Mattel.
Oh, honey, my gay guy at the counter, honey, set me up, honey. Oh, honey.
Now for this piece, what we wanted to do is we wanted to feature that really heavy eye makeup, and we weren't too sure how I was going to do it, and we came up with like a plushy sort of effect thing, which kind of mirrors that she tries to be a doll. We wanted to make like a plushie, so that's kind of what we went with there. And then the feathers, we thought, she loves nightwear. This is very sort of like, you know, 40s lingerie, you know, it's kind of got that nightwear sex appeal to it. So that's why we kind of merged them two things together. And here is the piece in question. Now, it's sequins, crystals, it's feathers, it's basically everything that a drag queen loves. It's even got some sequin fabric at the top. It's just pure drag in a hat. So if you want to see how we made this piece, keep on watching.
So for this tutorial you're going to need the following: buckram, white fabric, black fabric and some sequin fabric. The sequins you're going to need are black, clear, teal, cream and translucent gold, and we used 5mm sequins. You're also going to need some clear AB Swarovski crystals and some green Swarovski crystals as well. Both of these are the flatback no fix. You're also going to need some long white bugle beads. The ones we used were about 5 centimeters long. And then finally you're going to need some ostrich fringe, soft toy wadding, millinery wire and a ferrule. The equipment that we used in this tutorial are the topper block, which was part of the FHBS 01 from Hat Blocks Direct, and an embroidery hoop. Start by covering the block in cling film and then cut 3 squares of buckram to cover the block. Wet the buckram and block in our usual way. To do this you need to pin the buckram on the straight and pull on the bias using blocking pins to secure. This topper block has a groove along the bottom, so once the buckram has been blocked and using some string or some millinery elastic, make sure you use this in the groove to pull the buckram down even further. Set this aside to fully dry, and once dry, remove from the block. Cut a length of millinery wire which fits around the base, and using a blanket stitch, sew the wire to the base, connecting the wire with a ferrule. Put the base back on the block and cut enough black fabric to cover the block. Dampen the fabric and block this over the block with the buckram on. This will help the fabric take the shape of the block. but don't use stretchy fabrics like I did. If you want to use stretchy fabrics, skip the blocking section and just pin the fabric to the base, making sure you don't pull too much so you don't distort the base. If you're using non-stretchy fabric, block this as you would do usually and let the fabric dry. Once it's dried, sew down to the base and trim any excess fabric away, leaving around 1/2 centimetre on the inside of the base. Then you're going to need to cover the base in the sequin fabric. You won't need to dampen the fabric though if it's made from a tools type sequin fabric, but if it is more of a fabric based, then you may need to dampen it just to pull it on the bias so it fits nicely across the block. If you do have to dampen it, leave this to dry, and once it is dry, sew this to the base along the edge of the base like we did with the black fabric, trimming any excess sequins and leaving around 5 centimetre on the inside of the base. Now we're going to make the eyes for the pigs. Cut enough white fabric to sit comfortably in an embroidery hoop, and you will need 2 pieces, so make sure you cut 2 pieces which are the same size. Then, using the template provided, place the fabric over the template and trace on the outlines. I made a mistake here as I wanted the shiny side of the fabric on the inside, so make sure you have your tracing on the side that you want on the outside. Put this fabric into the embroidery hoop and tighten. It's up to you the order you put the sequins and the crystals onto the design, but I started with the crystals. To attach the crystals, I laid down a thick layer of appy glue and using a makeshift crystal picker-upper, which is just a pencil with blue tack on the end inner point, I placed the crystals where needed. Make sure you push the crystals down enough so the glue just pops at the side of the crystal, and once it's dried that will hold into place. You can also see that once you've done your first one, you can use this to make sure your second piece matches. I started with the green crystals, then I moved on to the clear crystals. Once the crystals are fully dried, you then need to sew down your sequins. This is quite time consuming, so make sure you get a TV show ready. Place your first sequin where you want it and come up from the back through the centre. Then push the needle through the fabric at the edge of the sequin. This is where the centre of the next sequin will be, so as you go along the row, you will need to adjust the positioning. Come up right next to that last stitch and thread on another sequin and keep going along the row, making sure your line is nice and neat. To give a more ombre effect on the eyeshadow section, we finished off each of the rows in clear sequins. This gives us nice lines but the correct colours where they should be on your design. Next, using the same technique, sew the black sequins onto the eyeliner section and a row under the clear crystals. This will give the look of the eyeliner underneath the eyes, but make sure you're using black thread for this, otherwise you will see stitches. Using the clear sequins, outline the eyeball. Make sure you're using white thread for this. Then, in a circular pattern, use the teal sequins to give the eye colour and use the black sequins for the pupil. Using the ombre technique we did earlier, fill out the eyebrow section with cream sequins, transitioning into the translucent gold. Then to finish your stitching in the embroidery hoop, you're going to use the long bugle beads, and if you just sew these in a line highlighting the top of the eyebrows, and this will give that kind of highlight look that you see in a lot of makeup. Remove from the hoop and cut around the eye in a shape that you want. We wanted some emphasis on the winged eyeliner, so went in a little on the side where it went down to the eye. Try give around 5 centimetre around your embroidery work so nothing comes loose and you don't cut into any of your stitches. Pin this onto the black fabric with the embroidery work facing up and sew around 1 centimetre from the embroidery work on a sewing machine. We wanted the look of the stitches showing, but if you don't, put the embroidery facing down on the fabric and sew around, and then just turn inside out if you don't want to see these stitches. Regardless which way you do, make sure you leave a gap at the bottom so you can stuff this with the wadding and trim away any excess fabric. Stuff the eyes with the toy filling wadding, making sure you get into every gap and every point. Then sew the bottom of the eyes shut. Position the eyes on the base, ensuring that the positioning is as even as possible, and sew these down along the bottom. You may need to put a discreet stitch in the back to stop the eyes from flipping over to the front. Now we're going to make a lining for the piece. Measure the block circumference and cut a piece of fabric long enough to go round, including a seam allowance. Hand sew along the seam allowance and cut away any excess. Then, starting at the seam allowance, sew a running stitch around 2 cm from the top, all along the top, and draw this fabric together as you stitching along. Put a couple of stitches in the top to secure, making sure the gathers look good on the inside, as this is what you will see in the inside of the hat. Place the centre of the lining in the centre of the hat, then fold over any excess fabric to sit between the lining and the base. Pin this into place and sew with white thread. The feather bow that we're about to attach will hide any white stitches on the outside. Add the feather boa to the edge of the hat. This one I had was part of a collar on a dress and had a string through the centre, making it very full on all angles. Sew through the string so you don't trap the feathers. Sometimes you may find feather boas on a piece of ribbon, so what I would do is place the ribbon with the feathers facing up, sew this into place, and then let the feathers fall over the ribbon so it hides your ribbon. Then to finish, all you need to do is add a hat elastic and some grosgrain ribbon to the inside.
So there you go, something very different. Obviously this series isn't your traditional headwear, your traditional let's make a mother of the bride hats. These are all inspired by drag queens, and we're going to have a lot of fun when we make hats in this series. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought about this. Who's your favourite drag queen? Who do you want to see next time? I have an idea for who was coming up next. So if you've got a fan favourite, make sure you let me know, and hopefully we'll be able to feature them in another episode of Drag Me to the Hat Shop. Like always, make sure you follow me on all my social media. So we've got Facebook, we have Instagram, we have Twitter, Snapchat, and for those of you that like to watch my videos to the end, we've got a Patreon, which the video will be linked to my Patreon request here somewhere on this video. I think it's that side. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.